Hey guys, welcome to Connect with Katie. I'm so glad that you can join me. I just wanted to let you know the program that I use for my awesome podcast. It's called Anchor. This program is free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone and your computer. Also, will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. Also, you can make money with no minimum listenership. Best thing is everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Hey everybody, welcome to the KT Talk Show. We have a very relaxing and zen episode today. My guest, Jake, he is in the background in nature, enjoying nature. I am in the comfort of my own bedroom, wishing I was probably in the same spot that you're in. So I met Jake through Jenny McDaniel, which Jenny's super cool. I love her quiet, sweet voice. She's just a welcoming person. And she was like, "Hey, you and Jake should do an episode together." So Jake and I had a little conversation. We got to know each other a little bit, and I really thought that Jake had an interesting story and what he's gotten into because of his story and his past. And I think that he has an awesome and really, exciting thing to tell. So our topic today is shamanism, and I never really brought that up before in any of the episodes. So I thought it would be fun to talk about it today. So to kind of bring it in, Jake, why don't you go ahead and give us a little introduction, and then we'll hop into that topic a little bit.
All right. Well, Katie, thank you for having me on. This is cool. I've never done anything like this, so it's exciting. I guess a little bit about me is I am, my background is very extensively in the performing arts. And I basically grew up dancing. I'm a dancer. I've danced professionally. I've been all around the world, ballet and modern mostly. And like even before I started my formal training in dance, I was always like moving. I couldn't stop moving, and I was always moving like out in nature too. So I've always had that very special sort of connection to nature through movement and through just like going off in my own fantasy world, like in the woods and like, talking to trees, talking to animals, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So movement was a huge part of my life. And it still is a really huge part of my life. And nature communicates to me through movement. And as I like progress like down my path of shamanic studies, I started to realize, especially here, I'm if you can hear me right now, I'm like outside in nature and there's a fountain behind me. I've been spending a lot of time here, and I'm in Pennsylvania right now, out in the wilderness, out in the woods, so to speak. And I've had sort of a lot of time to really engage and interact with the environment and like get feedback from the environment. And for those of you that have been following me on Facebook, I've been building a hut in the woods in the backyard. Yeah. No prior knowledge of how to do it. I just kind of like looked at some pictures and I was like, oh, okay, this is easy. And then it just kind of came together like that. And just been gradually adding on to it. But like that was born out of me just basically listening to the environment and just listening to what nature had for me and what it could provide for me and what I was allowed to take and use. And so that was that was I'm still learning about. I've learned a lot since being here because I've had all this time to engage like with nature, which is really hard to do in the city. I don't know if like there are people out there listening that are like in the city right now, or like trapped in the city because of COVID, or weren't able to escape. But if you're a city witch, you find it really difficult to engage with nature and to like work with nature to create rituals and do your workings and spells and try to do devotions and stuff like that. So it's been very this time here for me, even though it's unprecedented, it's been very useful for me to sort of get back in touch with like what the core of shamanism is, which I think is listening to the environment in which you're in. But so yeah.
No, I think that's amazing. And the thing that listening to nature and being in nature, I feel like a lot of us, if some of us are in any way, shape, or form, I think going more on the spiritual path, or you know what I mean, in some way, shape, or form, we are getting more and more drawn to nature. At least that's what I've noticed about myself.
Totally.
Recently, I just really want to be outside, you know, like it, even if it's just like sitting out in the sun or just like watching the birds or something, you know what I mean? I always feel, I've been feeling lately like I just need to be outside. And then if I'm stuck in the house, I just not feeling like caged in,
Right.
caged in from the world.
Right.
Be outside all the time.
Right. Because like, I guess during this time, we're realizing like I don't think it's an accident that people are like starting to go back to sort of a more natural way of living, or like wanting to be closer to the earth and wanting to be closer to nature.
Yeah.
I feel like the pandemic has really brought to light sort of like our lost connection to the planet itself.
Really.
And one of the things that I definitely noticed is that we're not, I mean, people always say this, people of all walks of life and of all spiritual creeds and associations have said this, is that we're indivisible from the planet. It's true. And until you're like, for me, even though I've like only begun to scratch the surface and like rediscovering what it is to like be a shamanic practitioner, just out here, is that once you start experiencing nature and start actively engaging with the environment and actively engaging in it, you start to discover, it was like, we're built to be here on this earth. Like we've been very diligent about divorcing ourselves from the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the virus is kind of our wake up call to be like, yo, you can't go on like this, guys.
Yeah, no, totally. That's exactly. I'm 100% on that same, you know, belief with you on that one for sure. That this is the big wake up call for us all. It's not necessarily supposed to, you know, wipe us all out and, you know, destroy the world and all that, you know, some of the things that people are saying. It's more about, no, like the Mother Earth and nature has so much to give, and you're meant to just embrace every single piece of it.
Right.
You know, so, and people, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that our grandparents knew about, and even farther back,
Right.
the people who were inhabiting this land before us. And if we want to go even farther back to some of us like are who are of European descent, who like came here from Europe or immigrated from other countries, going that far back to even our ancestors, they understood this connection. And they understood that we were indivisible from the planet to begin with. And what is happening now, I think, is this desire to move back in that direction. And again, I don't think it's an arbitrary thing. I think it's an instinctual thing. And this, to me, is what makes our connection to the planet so deeply, like, sacred and spiritual, because we're literally biologically wired to exist here. And we've, again, like I've said, we've tried so hard to separate ourselves or like dominate nature, and instead of like recognizing that we are a part of it and that we need to learn to be in harmony with it. And that means, for a lot of people, it means giving up a lot of things that were, I don't want to say comfortable, but just ways of thinking that,
Yeah, totally.
yeah, that aren't good for the everyone at large, I guess, like
Yeah.
the global community.
Hmm.
You know, we make decisions. Um, we don't make decisions based on that anymore. And what I think we're starting to move more towards now is making decisions based on that. At least I hope so. I mean, one can only hope.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Right, exactly. Yeah. And so can you explain a little bit how you got into your practice? I hope you can hear me okay. I
Yeah.
usually different. Okay. Usually is a different microphone, and this one's a little bit different. So in the practice that you do, and kind of why, how you have such a strong connection, and how you're relaying the information that you're relaying now we all can, if we dig deep enough, and we become more one with the universe, we start to feel these things, like, because not everybody can speak on the things that you can speak about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess, just kind of talk about how you got into that and how you feel what you feel.
Beautiful question.
Yeah.
So I guess it goes back to my parents, really. My mom and dad, respectively, were both black sheeps of their family.
Hmm.
And they came together and they had another black sheep, me. So, and as I was growing up, like, religion was never really a huge part of my life, because what I believe is that, um, because my parents had grown up with so much religious oppression in their lives and they took active steps to get away from it,
Yeah.
they didn't want the same thing for me. So they allowed me to explore, as much as I wanted to. And um, I really do feel like when you don't have that sort of religious background, imprinted on you, and that becomes the focal point for all your decision making, I really do feel like your spirituality already naturally gravitates towards nature. And
Yeah.
again, that's a human thing. I really do think it's a human thing. So I was no different. Um, I was uh, born hypersensitive. I am an empath. I can see, smell, taste, energy. You know, I pick up on things that people don't normally pick up on half the time, and that rendered me like with a lot of sensitivities to things that sometimes my parents didn't understand, and sometimes the people around me didn't understand. It wasn't until I was much older did I realize, okay, maybe I'm this way for a reason, and maybe I need to really start looking into this, um, like more. Uh, so I guess like, um, traditionally, there's like some telltale signs that one is called to become a shaman. Basically, the most
Yeah.
classic one is a near-death experience, which I guess if you want to count my birth, because I was very close to death when I came out of my mom's womb.
Hmm.
Um, I had a near-death experience at birth, even though I don't consciously remember it. I know it's there. But another tall tale sign is, spending a lot of time out in nature alone.
Yeah.
And having imaginary friends is another, sign that someone is meant to do some of the stuff that they
Mm.
do. Having out of body experiences regularly at night, which I had a lot more when I was a kid than I do now. Um,
Hmm.
so I mean, and everyone's going to be like those who feel called to do shamanism, to work with earth energy, to like work to heal the earth and the planet and to get a relationship back to the earth. Like those who feel called to do that work will feel it. There's no like really set way how like how you're supposed to be called to do it, or like if you don't hit this check mark, like it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not supposed to be doing it. Because one of the things I feel like there's a lot of dogma, and I think Jenny probably talked about this with you too, is that there's a lot of dogma, even in the spiritual community. There's a lot of dogma, and I think I really do feel like, especially when it comes to shamanism, with something as old and as ancient as shamanism, there's still some dogma to it, even though shamanism itself is called the path of direct revelation, which means it's the practitioner's only authority that what they're experiencing is true or correct. And even though like every culture on the planet practice shamanism in some way, like shamanism has been around for over 60,000 years. It's the oldest spiritual practice known to man, and it's existed for as long as humans have existed. There are more similarities than differences in the way that people practice. And one of the things that's really prevalent and across all boards is the ability to go into an altered state of consciousness, either via plant medicine, by sonic driving, by breath work, by ecstatic dance, etc. There are many other ways. And it's all consistent cross-culturally. So the dogma comes from wanting, I get the dogma, I get the dogma is in place of wanting to uphold this respect for the practice.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of dogma is okay, but if you're constantly basing your life around what you do, like I need to tick these check marks, then you're going to end up with a very restricted practice. You're going to end up with religion. You're not going to end up with spirituality.
Right. Yeah, I get that. Right.
But how this pertains to me is, I was called. Actually, I really did feel the call in a dream. Actually, so I said that my background was in performing arts. I went to Juilliard from 2010 to 2012, and the last year that I was there, I was in sort of a very tumultuous uphill battle with the dance faculty there. Basically, I was fighting with them on like allowing me to stay for the next 2 years. And it's still a situation to this day. I don't really understand why they didn't let me stay, but it really doesn't matter at this point. But the night of my birthday in 2012, which for those of you that are into the Wheel of the Year, it's on Imbolc. I don't think it was a coincidence that it happened then. But my dream was that I am in my grandmother's house, and I see this woman in there. She's kind of like this crone figure, and she's like in these really beautiful high priestess-like robes, right? Mm-hmm. She motions toward the back door. She opens the door, and then outside there is this black mass. It looks like a bird. At first I thought it was a raven, but then I looked closer, and it's actually a vulture. And it was looking at me, and I can't explain this, but it was smiling at me. And it opened up its wings, and the sun like was shining through, so that it was like this big black silhouette with its wings outraised as if it was like getting ready to embrace me. Mm-hmm. And at this point, like the dream became an out-of-body experience. Like it was so vivid and so real, and so like I did not know like if I was awake or asleep. And the dream was so powerful. The energy of the dream was so powerful that it actually jerked me awake. I was sweating. My heart was pounding. I was like almost on the verge of tears. I felt like I was having a panic attack almost.
Oh, wow.
Um, So I had a visitor that night, and it's a visitor that's actually come to me a couple times too since then. But I looked up because I'm in college and I have my laptop, and I just go on the internet to look up shit, and then I go on the internet and I look up uh, vulture animal medicine, and then sure enough, there it goes. There's like this article about vulture medicine represents it's a semi-permanent totem, and it usually represents you're about to go through a death, basically. And I didn't really understand what or why at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but the vulture was there to rescue me because I think about 4 days before school officially let out, I was called into a meeting with the assistant dean of Juilliard, not just the dance division of Juilliard, but like Juilliard, the school. Basically, excuse the donkeys in the background. My neighbor, my neighbor has donkeys, and they're super annoying sometimes.
That's nature for you.
Right, exactly. But I go into this meeting with the assistant dean of the school, and basically I'm like given the ultimatum. It's like, look, you can either be kicked out or you can choose to withdraw if you want the alumni status. So I chose the graceful way out.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting to me that I had that dream a couple months prior to that happening, because after that, my whole life began to fall apart piece by piece. And it continued to fall apart after that. It wasn't just like one fall apart and then it's done. It continued to fall
never.
apart. Yeah.
Never.
Right. It's never that way. So it continued to fall apart. So the essence, I guess, like the essence of what a shaman goes through when they're initiated is kind of like, it's a death, whether it's an ego death, a death of some part of your life, or
Right.
some relationship that you've had to something in your life, a physical death. It doesn't really matter, because it usually, like, a shaman's power comes from being able to transmute the shambles of like what's being picked apart from you into what you always were. It's almost it's a shedding, basically, becoming what you've always were.
And I hope I'm not cutting you off. Something just came to me when I was you mentioned before that there was different areas, I might be saying this incorrectly, maybe different regions of the earth or different countries, something like that, that there was different shamanism. So they practice it differently.
Mm-hmm.
And is there different ones for like different cultures? Because I know there's Europe. You said Europe, right? And then I don't know if you want to explain those a little bit, because I know I'm just curious about those in particular, the ones that you know about.
So, as I've said, I've been in this for a really long time.
Yeah.
Since I was a teenager. And throughout the research that I've done, it's like I've said before, each culture had shamanism in some way, but it was always, and it was always like wherever that culture happened to be, it was always in direct, reverent, participatory relationship with the environment, with the land that they happen to occupy, if that makes any sense. Which is why you see like the Aboriginals in Australia. They use they use the didgeridoos and circular breathing and the rain sticks to go into trance. In Mongolia, throat singing is often used to induce an ecstatic state. One of the most common things, though, to induce trance, like across culturally almost consistently is the use of some type of noisemaker, like usually a
Yeah.
drum or a rattle or whistling or chanting usually. So it's really, um, and the people that I've trained with have always said this to me, is that um, even though that there are particular cultures of shamanism, what's always consistent is the relationship with the earth itself, which is why a lot of shamanic practice is so different and it's so ranged. And a lot of it was an oral tradition as well, before there was any sort of system of writing.
Yeah. Okay.
So a lot of the rituals that were lost over time, or a lot of like the ceremonies, or like the way that things were done, were lost over time because it wasn't written down, and also because of the, you know, the onslaught of Christianity,
Yeah.
basically
Yeah.
satanizing shamans. Um, so there's one incident in particular. I think it was like the burning of the drums or something like that. I think it was it happened in Siberia, and I think in some parts of Finland and Norway as well, where they basically sought out the shamans in these tribes, and they took their drums and they burned them. And I think in the I think it's the Sami tradition, which the Sami people were an indigenous tribe, are an indigenous tribe of Europeans who live in Arctic Norway, Arctic Sweden, Finland, some parts of Russia as well.
Mm-hmm.
The accounts of the burning of the drums are usually from them, and I think only 7 authentic drums remain, and I think they're all in museums now. But
Probably.
you know, but uh, yeah, shamanism. Just like from me being here in Pennsylvania, it's relatively closer to nature.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I'm not in these areas where um, these traditions were practiced, like I'm not in Australia, I'm not in Northern Europe, I'm not in Mongolia, I'm not in Africa. Um, it's it really just all comes back to your relationship to the environment and to the earth in which you occupy. And so one of the phrases that was used to describe shamanism, or like the origins of shamanism, is it's the earth itself. It's not indigenous to one particular tribe. It's indigenous to the earth itself. It's how human beings have related to the planet and have expressed their spirituality through the planet, through their connection to the planet. That's my understanding of it anyway.
Yeah.
I think I've really rediscovered that since spending a little bit more time out in nature and, you know, building stuff.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
I'm just really curious because, I expressed to you before that, I just started doing like I just was doing like Kundalini yoga, and
Mm-hmm.
I just recently was doing like dance meditation, and it's just weird how like certain things come to me, or I feel drawn to certain um way, like different ways of practicing, I guess, different religions, like how you said, like Hinduism, like
Mm-hmm.
different ways that they practice, or what else? I mean, mostly that's a lot of what's came to me for some reason. I don't know why. And maybe you would understand it more than I would. But I'm just trying to like kind of think about like what you said and how just different, religions in a sense, um, do have the pieces of it. I don't know how to explain it. Like you said, it's kind of hard to like. I'm just trying to like break it
Okay.
down.
Right. So I guess I think I want to say this. So
Okay.
I, I said earlier that shamanism was described as the path of direct revelation, which means
Right.
that everything that you experience is correct. That can also be rewritten, and this is a cardinal sin in Christianity because it's putting yourself at the same level as God, which is seen as a sin, is that you are indivisible from God. You are an extension of God consciousness or source
Yeah.
consciousness or
Right.
universal consciousness, whatever you want to call it. Shamans understood this as well.
Okay.
So with Kundalini yoga, with dance meditation, with everything like that, all those are very actually deeply shamanic practices. And what makes it shamanic is that you're stepping outside of your ego self to get information that's otherwise hidden from other people relative to you or relative to someone else.
Yeah.
And that's a really powerful tool. And you can understand how that tool, as powerful as that, would be a threat to doctrinated religion.
Yeah.
Because it would mean it would give the individual a lot of power and therefore not a whole lot of means to control them.
Of course.
Because I mean, I'm sorry to rag on Christianity, guys, but you know, because I know that
I'm okay with it, but
I know that there are some Christians out there that are really into the religion for the right reasons. But one thing I really hope that they understand is how much that religion took away from the human race.
right. Yeah. I agree with you there for sure.
We lost a very vital connection to who we are as primal beings, and a very sort of vital essence that can't be explained really, except by the experience of it in our bodies and in our our relationships and who you are and where you're standing in an environment or in nature. We've lost a lot of that, and I think now there is now starting to be a collective desire to want to get that back.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one too, for sure.
Yeah.
It's like the people who almost have a little bit stronger, it's almost like the older souls or something.
Right.
People have a stronger desire to do it. And, it's just certain people, and those people are like drawn together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I just think that's awesome.
Yeah.
But thanks for explaining that though, because I obviously am still learning, have a lot to learn, and we all still have a lot to learn always.
Yeah.
And I say that probably like every single episode, I swear.
I mean, I've been practicing shamanism since I was maybe 14, and I am nowhere near an expert on it. I mean, I know a lot about it, but I am not a master by any means. And every single day, like, nature will present me something new, or like something else will surface. Like, it's just constantly piecing stuff together. You're constantly learning, and it keeps it fresh too.
Yeah, it does. And it starts to, and I'm sure I don't know if you believe this too, but the mind, like the mind, body, and soul, making sure that all of them are connected in some sense.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I know I was just telling you this before we started like recording, is I'm like having these off days and I'm just kind of off. And, it's like because I'm not spending the time, what I think is important for me is being outside and, being in nature and doing the dance and like releasing all this. Cause then I start to feel tense and and it's almost like this, something gets sucked back into me that I've been releasing for so long.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Get back to what you're doing. Get back to the.
Yeah. It's like, the best metaphor that I can describe is kind of like, just because I've had so many experiences, I'm going to go back to the Sami people for a second, just because that ancestor group was the first group to contact me through my shamanic journeys to like, basically relay the message of the reindeer because that part of the world is so cold and the environment is so harsh, and reindeer are everywhere up there. So they harness the power of the reindeer up there for
Oh my gosh,
the
that's so cool.
for the survival of the tribe. So reindeer medicine basically is like constantly guiding yourself back to the path, back to the path, back to the path, back to the path. And you're going to wander, you're going to wander off the path. You're going to deviate. It doesn't matter how long you deviate for, just know that you need to bring yourself back to the path. But you also need to understand that the longer you deviate, the farther you have to go back to it.
Right. Yep.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so
That is so true.
it's like herding reindeer, just call the reindeer back to the path, so to speak.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's a good way to put it too, because it's you're feeling good, and then you're doing what you need to do, and it's almost like it hits you like a brick. Like, nope, that is not what you're supposed to be doing.
yeah, and you'll be given plenty of chances. The universe will throw like so many signs and so many people in your path until you actually get the message. You're not supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
Or you're supposed to be doing this, but you keep going this way. So I'm going to throw even something bigger in your direction.
Mm-hmm. You're right. Exactly. Even bigger.
Yeah.
Like, smack you in the face with it.
Yeah. Kind of like the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Stop! Everyone stop!
Yeah, exactly. A big, huge stop sign on the planet.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, the last thing that I wanted to was ask you about was I know what runes are in a sense, but you post a lot about them. So do you make those, like make the little ones that you post about, or is that something that you find? Because I found the ones I have just at like a crystal moon rock store, everybody calls those stores. Everybody calls it something different.
Yeah.
And they have them on different stones and things like that. But I mean, what really,
Any magical object or any. I'm always going to be the one to say, like, the objects, the divination objects, or like the tools or anything like that, the ones that hold the most power are the ones that you make yourself. The runes that I have, I made out of birch bark. I just had like, or birch branch.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a handheld saw, and my dad was cutting trees down a couple weeks ago, and I was like, "Hey, can you save a branch?" And so I just brought the branch over to my bench, and I just started sawing off 24 pieces, and then I just wood burned the symbols into the discs. And I've been using them a lot, and they've been pretty effective, I think, for me and for other people.
Mm-hmm.
But any object that you can get directly from nature and sort of like work with nature to make a magical object or to make a tool are usually the most powerful ones. So I'm always going to advocate for that.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that if you go into a shop and you see a set that you really, really, really like, you should absolutely get it because you're being called to it. But to go to answer your question on what runes are, I know people have probably seen them in like The Hobbit or like The Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
or things like that. So Tolkien actually studied Norse mythology, Norse and Old English mythology, pretty extensively when he was writing those books. And those runes are actually, they're not exact, but they're derived from the ancient Proto-Germanic alphabet. It's called Futhark, Futhark, and it's Futhark, as it's called in Old Norse, is a system of writing. Basically, each letter had a cult meaning, but it was a system of writing used by the tribes of Central and Northern Europe. And what's interesting about them is that they're designed in such a way that they can be etched or carved onto certain pieces of wood or stone or anything like that, because the writing utensils back then weren't like, they didn't ancient times, right? So they didn't have like um, nice lavish pens or quills or anything like that. They had stone and they had sharp objects, usually,
Yeah.
you know, daggers or spears or anything of that like. So the writing had to reflect what the tool was capable of doing. So, which is why the runes kind of look very stark and very sort of angular, because that was the easiest way that you could write in stone or in wood. That's the only way that it would cooperate. So you don't see a lot of curvy lines or anything like that. It's all very angular and very stark.
Yeah, that makes sense because it's not. I mean, it'd be extremely hard to be able to make a little curve or anything like that with those objects that they had to utilize.
Right. They used what they had. They
Exactly. Yep.
so um what else do I want to say about runes? So Elder Futhark, as it's called, was used by the Germanic peoples of like Central Europe, and then as the Roman Empire sort of started to take over and started to basically take over Europe, um, the tribal the tribes of Europe were kind of pushed out to the north, and they kept going north and kept going north into Scandinavia. And as they kept going into Scandinavia, they the runes changed. So it's kind of like through generational things and through um, uh, forgive me, guys. I'm really not that much of an expert on this, but this is just my understanding of it.
No, yeah,
Um,
that's okay. You don't have
um,
to be.
this is just my understanding of it, but the Elder Futhark evolved into the Younger Futhark eventually, and that's what's used to basically create bind runes and spell staves and stuff. And event, so there are a lot of derivations of the runic alphabet, which is why you'll see them. Which is why you'll see more than one runic alphabet. But the one that's used for divination, that is the most popular, is the Elder Futhark, and that is the one that you see sold in stores.
Mm-hmm.
I find them simply to be the most effective for divination because there's they have each has a specific meaning to it, and I think emphasis on the meaning more um, was more prevalent in earlier times than it was, say, when it evolved. Um, because in the younger Futhark, just to me, doesn't seem to convey a lot of esoteric meaning, as much esoteric meaning per each individual letter as the elder does.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably one of the reasons why um, people still use the elder Futhark for divination.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and people don't really I've noticed that people really don't gravitate towards runes as much as they do tarot cards or
Yeah.
any other form of divination, really. Um, and the reason why I think the reason is because I think it's because uh, the runes are very, at least to me, like how they, because I've worked with them, they're very direct, and they represent primal forces in nature, because the Norse people were very connected to nature. They organize their lives around it, like so many Earth-based indigenous people. They organize their lives around the environment and around nature. So it only makes sense that they have an alphabet that would reflect that. So um, I guess yeah, yeah, that's
That's pretty much it.
yeah.
So
So and I guess that's why people don't they find it a little confusing to read, because it doesn't really give them a lot to work with as much as, say, a
right.
tarot card does,
Yeah, I get
because
can see that.
You have pictures and tarot cards to work with, and you have as a lot more leeway for your subconscious mind to fill in blanks when you're giving a reading for someone. But
Yeah.
I've always gravitated more towards like magical symbols rather than pictures.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I still use tarot cards, but sometimes I can find the images on tarot to be a little distracting, just because
Yeah.
there's a lot of imagery. It's a painting basically. You're looking at paintings. There's a lot to take in about it, and each card tells a story in and of itself. And for me, I need a little bit more streamlined of a way to give someone a reading, so runes are perfect for that. That's just me, my
No,
energy.
yeah, I like that because I think I really like runes, and I've seen it be used in different ways. Just the symbols, and I personally was intrigued because I'm like, okay, this is goes like way back. Like these symbols were made from so long ago, so like these really I feel like mean more to me. You know what I mean? Just a lot more authentically mean something.
Right.
So when I looked into it, you have to dig a little bit deeper, to really understand what they mean. I think so anyways. As opposed to, like you were saying, as a tarot card, it's a little bit, in a sense, it can be distracting, but it can also be some way a little bit easier for other people, I think,
Yeah,
to interpret.
it just depends on what your like what you prefer to do, what you prefer to use, what you're good at using, you know.
Yeah, what's kind of called to you.
Yeah, with runes, the meaning I definitely noticed emerges by trying to live out the concept in which it conveys. And that, again, because the runes are in Norse mythology, it's the runes are the language of nature.
Mm-hmm.
So really just like looking at a rune and looking for that symbol, say like in a branch pattern in like a tree canopy, or like on the back of a butterfly, or in a leaf, or in twigs, or anything like that.
Yep.
um, you really start to understand like what's meant by them, basically by participating in listening to nature, I guess, is what
Yeah.
I'm really trying to say. And
No, yeah. That makes perfect sense.
it's
It
the
really
same it's the same for tarot too. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the ways that I really started to learn and embody tarot was like, okay, this card means this. I see this picture. I'm going to go out now and see how this scenario plays out in my real life that's
Mm-hmm.
displayed in this card, and
Yep.
like what the meaning is surrounding it. And then I slowly start to build my vocabulary relative to that. And it's the same way with the
Yeah.
runes.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. Especially when the ones that I was just telling you that I bought, she gave me a little card to reference, and I just happened to get that one again. I just kind of like felt around. I'm like, okay, which one am I drawn to? And it was that same one. It's like that Z looking one almost. Um,
Soilo, I think is what
yes,
it's called. Yeah.
yes. I couldn't remember how to say it or what it's called. But that one I like saw it even in, and this is really weird, but like I was taking a shower and it was like almost like it was drawn in on like the condensation, and then
Mm-hmm.
I could see it in my. I'm like how did that even? How is that even possible? And then you were on Facebook and I saw it, and then I like picked it out on here. I'm like, okay, this is like just keeps happening and reappearing.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my teachers, his name is Robert Moss. He wrote several books about shamanic dreaming. But one of my favorite quotes by him is, "Whatever you think, the universe says yes." So
Yeah,
I don't think we live in a universe that's based on no. I don't think the universe
definitely not.
understands no. Um, I think we live, human beings, especially the human body, um, itself operates on a yes.
Yeah.
I don't think it really.
I feel that.
Yeah, like it operates on a yes, and
Yeah.
I don't.
It even feels good to say yes. Like you say no.
Right.
It's like, oh, and then you say yes.
Right. You say. I mean, no is good because no indicates like that's not a way to go, or that's not where the energy should flow.
Yeah. Right.
But it's better to, I guess. It's just about directing your energy productively as opposed to creating resistance to something that you don't want, because just by virtue of your resistance to that thing that you don't want, you're gonna go right into it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they're resistant. Like resisting is like seriously, I swear, I feel for me was one of the worst things that I could have done. It was resisting a lot of things that I knew I had to face, and it was scary stuff. You
story
know,
of my life.
yes, like scary stuff that I mean, and there's still I know a couple things that I know that I have to work through, and I'm fine with it now. You know what I mean? But oh my gosh, like there was some stuff that I was really just not trying to deal with,
Right.
and you just gotta deal with that crap. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah, you have to, because if you don't deal with it, the universe is going to put you in a chokehold
Oh
position where
my
you're
gosh.
going
Yeah.
to be forced to choose the right choice.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but sometimes we need that, and it's okay.
hmm and that's what I'm talking about. And I'm to
Mm,
the point where I realize that sometimes, and you think you like, oh, you have these bad days. What's wrong with me? What did I do? And it's like, no, it's just you just got to work through something. And guess what? You're gonna be, you work through it and you find what maybe you had to release, what you had to learn from it, whatever it was,
right.
something like that. So
Yeah, it's all good.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
all good.
In the end, it's all good.
Even though it feels like shit, it's
Yeah,
all good.
exactly. So I'm gonna just ask you one more little like random question because I was like, oh, we'll just go with it. I found it, and maybe you don't even have one, but if you had, let's say, some sort of bucket list, what's like one of the last things that you want to do? What's one left on your bucket list so far? The question is, I have these pod decks. I'm sorry, geez, oh, Pete, of course this goes off. We got all kinds of things going off. So the card says, "What's left on your bucket list?" But we're both really young, so I feel like we have a lot. But it's just the first one that popped up. So
Mm. Oh, uh, yeah. It's like we're both really young, so there's a lot of things left on my bucket list, I guess. But I guess one of the things on my bucket list is to either go to Iceland or Arctic Norway
okay,
and do a vision quest there.
awesome.
Yeah.
I've never been to neither, and I haven't really heard a whole lot about either. I know somebody that went to Iceland, but I didn't really like know them. Know them, you know what I mean? So
I mean, I've been to a lot of other places in Europe, but Northern Europe is like it's where the majority of my ancestors are from. It just seems right that I take a visit up there one day.
yeah, of course.
You know.
Sweet. Yeah, I really have, I keep telling you about like Hinduism and like for some reason that culture calls me I really that my one of mine is going to India. I would love to be and just feel and everything about that place.
I
Something about it.
India was on my bucket list too. I really had I when I was a kid, I really had a fascination for Indian culture, and
Yes.
also a lot for Chinese culture as well. Asian
hmm
culture, overall Pan Asian culture, just in general, like all of those, just Eastern philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like some more Eastern philosophy. I guess it's my not necessarily Hindu. It's not like I practice that. You know what I mean? Nothing like that. It's just um those philosophies, I should say, is more of the things that I like to learn about and research.
Yeah,
So, yeah. But I will let you get back to your nature because I think I'm gonna actually go outside and take a walk myself.
It's
I
so
need to
good
get
for
up.
you.
Yes, I need to get up and get moving.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for popping on. I had a good time. This was a nice, relaxing conversation.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you
Yes,
for having me on.
yes, of course. Well, you enjoy the rest of your night, and I will talk to you soon.
All right, you too, Katie.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.
This episode is powered by Poddex.